Hi, I'm James Shillinglaw. I'm here with someone we've spoken with in the past, Paul Metzelar, who's chairman and CEO of Ovation Travel Group, and it's one of the largest travel agencies in the country. And we wanted to get Paul's take, obviously, on the current situation, the current crisis, as well. And I actually saw Paul on another webinar recently, and he had some very interesting things to say about this. And that was a few weeks ago, so I'm sure there's even more interesting things to say about it, unless we're just tired of the whole thing. We'll see. First of all, Paul, how are you and where are you right now?
Yeah, so I'm hunkered down with my wife and my younger daughter and her boyfriend. We are quarantining or sheltering in place in Watermill, New York, which is out in eastern Long Island, and been here since the beginning of March. And I desperately miss my office and my colleagues and normal life. So,
as we all do. And in fact, one of the things, you had just really opened a brand new office on 3rd Avenue, and I assume right now it's all but empty right now, right?
Yes, sadly, we moved into what was the culmination of almost 36 years of being in business, really a showplace of an office, and it was spectacular. It still is spectacular. And we were in the process of getting our outdoor space ready for opening as well. We're on 42nd and 3rd in the heart of the Grand Central area of New York, and it's it's a place that we miss terribly, and and all the people that were very happy in our new space. Everybody's doing what we're doing, which is sheltering in place now and waiting for this pandemic to pass so we can hopefully go back to some semblance of normalcy.
Yeah, whatever that is in the future, we'll see. But now specifically, what have you had to do at Ovation Travel Group to sort of meet the initial challenges posed by the COVID-19 crisis?
Yes. Well, so like other large travel companies, we were, as an industry, we were hit first and we were hit hardest. And so back in February, it became clear that this was no ordinary crisis. And so we have, done whatever every other large travel company has done and tried to adjust our costs to our revenues. Our revenues at this point are negative, which I have to say, when I took over my father's very small travel business with 4 employees almost 36 years ago, we were actually doing more business at that time than we're doing now.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's just shocking. I mean, it's negative because the amount of refunds that we're processing far outweigh the current bookings that we're processing, and so it's been something that nobody could ever have possibly anticipated. And having been through several existential crises over the course of my career, whether you're talking about 9/11, where we had an office in the Trade Center, or when we thought nothing could be worse than 9/11, of course, than the global financial crisis, which shrank our business almost 50%. I would say this crisis is so many more orders of magnitude worse than both of those combined, in terms of the protracted nature and the absolute destruction that it's inflicted on our beloved travel industry.
No, it's shocking. I mean, I thought after 9/11, as you did, and then the financial crisis, we had seen it all. And I mean, SARS and H1N1 and all that were just a drop in the bucket because they never really came over here. This has been, it's a crisis, unfortunately, that is sadly built a lot on fear as well as the virulence of the virus. So I think it's hard for people to get over it, and it's going to be hard for everybody to get back traveling. But so you're kind of through the stages now of, you've gotten your clients home, both corporate and leisure. You've done the rebookings, the cancellations, the refunds. So what else is there to do for now?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the most important thing that we could be doing now, in terms of both the folks that we had a furlough and what we call our business continuity group, which is still actively working. We are communicating as much as possible and as frequently and as candidly as we can. I'm reading a great book now called The Splendid and the Vile. It's an Eric Larson book about the London during the Blitz and how Churchill's leadership got them through that period in England. And I feel like, in some ways, there's a lot of lessons there in terms of how you communicate. And so that's what we're trying to do as much as possible, trying to be candid and not, hype anything up that is not realistic, and we just unfortunately had to extend the furlough period, which we thought was going to be through the end of May, and we had to extend it through the end of June, for hundreds of our colleagues who've been with us for many, many years. And it's heartbreaking, and it's horrific. And fortunately, a lot of our folks are able to qualify for, some degree of unemployment and other benefits. And so we are really hoping that when things start to resolve, obviously that the trillion-dollar question is when, we'll be able to start bringing some of our, colleagues back with us to join the ones that are still with us. So.
Well, you just said there is a $2 trillion question under the CARES Act. Have you, obviously the unemployment situation where a lot of your people might have been independent contractors and technically they're eligible, although I hear it's been a challenge for the last few weeks getting states to start those benefits. Have you also been working with the SBA loans and things like that to see if...
Yes, we are doing everything possible to apply for, and we've had some success. We are waiting on other financing buckets that the government has made available. So we don't have our complete financing in place yet, but we've made progress. And fortunately, we have a very good relationship with our bank, and we were among the first companies to take measures to adjust their business and also to make sure that we had the resources to wait this out as long as we needed to. And I'm happy to say we do, and we will. And we will survive and get to the other side of this. The big, as I said, $1 trillion question is, when does this start to ameliorate, and what does that look like, and what is travel? How is travel going to change, and how soon will our clients be feeling confident and trusting that it's safe to go back into the water, as it were?
Now, I guess that's sort of another big question, is because obviously you have you started as more corporate travel and you came into luxury leisure travel a lot. How do you think corporate travel will emerge from this? I've heard some reports that companies may start to travel less, and the new normal they don't want employees to travel as much. They all will go on Zoom calls like we're doing now, or which is something that has been threatened for years. But whether this is the crisis that pushes it in that direction, I mean, what do you see for corporate travel?
Yeah, so I would say two things about that, James. First of all, if you recall back, 20 years ago when everyone talked about video conferencing sounding the death knell for corporate travel, exactly the opposite happened in the video conferencing, and we're on a Zoom call. I will tell you, everybody is so sick and tired of Zoom calls at this point that they can't wait to get out there and press the flesh of people again. I mean, human beings are social animals by nature. And so what is happening now is so anathema to the human spirit. So I think that I think that the travelers themselves are going to be itching to get out there on the road again. Having said that, I think the travel managers will be the ones who will say, hold on, we have to make sure that everything is safe and secure.
Right.
So there's going to be a huge tug of war between corporate travelers who want to get out on the road again. And the first thing the reason that they're going to be picking up the phone or emailing their travel managers to say, you got to let me go, is because there's a word called competition. And as soon as my clients see that their lawyers and bankers and entertainment folks and other that their competitors are on airplanes again, it's like FOMO for young kids. There's going to be this fear of missing out on an opportunity.
Yes, that's a good analogy. I like that.
Competition is going to drive corporate travelers back into the skies again, coupled with the precautions that the airline and suppliers are taking to make travel more, as safe as possible in this environment.
And of course, the corollary question is on the leisure side. How will leisure travel emerge, and how quickly do you think people will get back to cruising, going to resorts and hotels, and taking tours? What will be that new normal for leisure travel, as far as you can tell?
So I actually have a thesis about this, and it has to do with my kids. And here's how it goes. So my kids, who are in their 20s and early 30s, and all their friends, particularly here in New York, by the way, which is the global epicenter of the pandemic, they've all either had the virus or all their friends have had the virus. They survived the virus. They were barely symptomatic. And basically, they have tremendous cabin fever. And so my thesis is that the airlines are going to do an amazing job of offering once-in-a-century deals, like $69 to go from New York to California, vice versa. And the first group that's going to travel again are young kids who, number one, they think they're indestructible because they're young. Mm-hmm. And number two, as I said, they probably have immunity already. And so that's going to happen. And there's something called social media that.
What's that? I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, so that is going to be the lubricant that gets this thing going. And the reason I say that is because as soon as the young people start going back and traveling again, you're going to see they're going to be posting on social media, on Snapchat, on Instagram, and their friends are going to see, oh, gee, Betty and Sam are traveling again. Maybe I'm not going to die if I get on a plane. And that is going to be the initial sort of spark that will have my clients, who are very, for the most part, high-end luxury travelers on the leisure side. They're going to say, oh, gee, my kids are going. Maybe it's not unsafe. Maybe, the airlines are doing a great job of making the planes safe and sanitary. So maybe we should book something. And frankly, they're going to book for the fall and maybe Thanksgiving and Christmas first. And what the suppliers have done to help facilitate that is they're offering amazing deals, not only amazing deals, but with no cancellation penalties. And so you won't even...
And easy rebooking if you want, yeah.
Exactly. So and I actually think that if people don't book in the next few weeks, by the fall, I think the demand is going to be chasing the supply, and, the fares are going to go through the roof. And if you don't act soon, you're going to get stuck. And there's no downside to getting stuck because there's no penalties in canceling. So why not book something now?
Well, you're absolutely right, and I think the same goes for cruising now. There's the tremendous deals out there are going to be soon, and the penalties are non-existent, and you can always move that cruise to later.
100%. And my good friend who owns a big cruise distributor company, one of the largest in North America, told me his bookings for 2021 are coming in very strong right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. How about your own? Are you seeing any bookings for 2021 yet? So we mostly in our luxury leisure business, a lot of our business is last minute. And although we do have still quite a few bookings for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and even later this summer that have yet to cancel. So, we're hoping that those bookings, to the extent that people are going to feel comfortable over the next few weeks as areas of the economy start opening up, that those bookings will firm up. And so that's what we're thinking is going to happen. Well, you mentioned luxury travel, and of course that is a high focus for you. You're a Virtuoso member agency. What's going to make the change there? I mean, will high-end travelers, maybe they led by their kids, come back to traveling sooner?
Yeah, I think that there is just particularly among luxury travelers who have been basically quarantined with their families for months now.
I know that's a horrible thought, isn't it?
There are blessings in that, but there are also, it gives you an opportunity to dream about where you are. I'm certainly talking about this with my wife. I mean, we can't wait to get back to Paris and places like that when things open up. And so our clients who are the top of the top in terms of luxury travel, look, they're going to start booking things that are like, villas that are separate, that are private. A lot of them fly private now. And so I think that is going to be the beginnings of the, resurgence of luxury travel, our private jet trips, and trips to, luxury resorts that have, private facilities where they could go in and out, and not have to, spend a lot of time mingling with the other customers, because there aren't going to be a lot of other customers.
Right. No, that's certainly, I think that's what you're right on in terms of how it's going to start. We'll see what happens. Now, let's move to kind of the idea of what a travel agency is today. Do you think this is going to change the structure of travel agencies? Does it validate the independent contractor host model that in some cases, seems to predominate? Or, you have both, you have a full office and you have independent contractors, or is there a new model that we haven't thought of yet that's going to emerge because of this crisis?
Yeah. Well, I think in terms of a new model, perhaps on the corporate side, maybe we'll go to more of a subscription model as opposed to transaction fee model. But I think the more, what has really come out of this pandemic is how critical it is to have a great travel advisor, whether you're on the corporate side or the luxury leisure side. I mean, our advisors on the luxury leisure side have spent like literally months hand-holding, and they're almost like therapists talking to their clients about, not just helping them get out of situations where we have literally, I would say we've refunded multi-millions of dollars of deposits to our luxury leisure clients. And that's because of the relationships that we've built over 36 years in this industry and being a big virtuoso supplier. And they've been a tremendous help as well. But what I think the good news is that when we come out of this thing, I think that the importance of the travel advisor generally is going to be so much more apparent, and our value is going to be such that I believe that we will be able to command higher fees. And frankly, I think a lot of our competitors, as we've seen after 9/11 and after the global financial crisis, fell away or consolidated or went out of the business for whatever reason. So I think that we'll have more pricing power. I think that our clients will value what we do more. And, on corporate and the risk management side, we do a tremendous service to our customers, making sure that they are, when they travel, that they comply with health and safety requirements and give them reporting and so on. And on the luxury leisure side, the same kind of hand-holding occurs. And so I think that our services will be even more demand on the other side of this thing.
Well, it's rather ironic. It takes a crisis. I think that's a new book. But then to have people realize the value of a travel advisor. I know after 9/11, everyone said that was a time when everybody thought that. And I suppose even after in the recession, when there were still some things going on that people could turn to travel advisors, but it continues to be, a validation effort. And here we got it is the biggest crisis we've ever faced. And in my lifetime, certainly, I was not alive during the Great Depression, although my parents told me all about it and my grandparents did, but I don't think it holds a candle to what we might have here. I think because of the economy, we might have a better chance of bouncing back if it doesn't last too much longer. But certainly travel advisors are well positioned to capitalize on this because of the services they provide. Now, I guess one of my last questions to you is, what lessons so early? I mean, this all happened so quickly. I mean, it literally feels like yesterday when, we were out there and people were talking about it, but, we thought it was SARS or H1N1 or something, and it was going to stay in China, right? And now what lessons have we learned? What lessons have you learned from this crisis so far that you could apply to the future?
Yeah, well, I feel like this is all my fault, actually, because when I do speaking engagements, one of the things that I'd say for years is, nothing could be worse than 9/11, and of course, I feel like I'm completely responsible for that I jinxed the situation. In terms of lessons, I mean, there are things that you can plan for and things that you just can't. And this is something, obviously, we need to make sure that we run a tight and lean organization as much as possible, because you just never know what the future holds. And this is just such an extraordinary event that, the lessons for the future are probably, run a very efficient organization, count your blessings, and, just prepare for the worst. And one day, it'll happen. And, I'm not sure how we could have prepared, though, any differently to wait this thing out. It's just so beyond, anything else we've ever seen. So.
No, absolutely. Well, you just pointed out one of the great services a travel advisor provides. We can blame someone, So we're going to blame you for this, and you better get it right. I mean,
full responsibility.
Take responsibility. Now, is there anything else you could think of that you want to get out there about what your experience is during this crisis, or how you think it's going to change travel in the future?
Yeah. So look, I am an optimist by nature, unlike some of my partners, and I see. Lately, in particular, there's just tremendous amount of negativity right now. But I think that, based upon what I see, and Warren Buffett selling out his airline stocks, and all the airlines laying off people, and United saying they don't see anything coming back to normal till next spring, and so on. That to me means that we have called the bottom of this pandemic, meaning that when you're at the bottom, there's only one place for us to all go, and that is up. And, so I am very cautiously optimistic. I don't know when it's going to happen. I'm hoping sometime over the summer, this thesis that I have of the young kids starting, and then the corporate folks getting worried about competition and all that, will sort of, that whole brew will simmer, and there'll be a tipping point where people will start to say, gee, I think it's safe to go back in the water. And, travel is something that people, they must do. It's not a nice to have. It's a must have on the corporate side, and it's a must have on the leisure side too, particularly at the high end. And we saw that after the global financial crisis. The first to come back was the high end leisure travel. So I'm cautiously optimistic that things will start to come back at some point over the summer. And then I do think a lot of companies have taken a big hit, and so the volume may be less in terms of corporate travel, less travel, but it won't be because of Zoom calls. It'll just be because the economy took such a tremendous hit. And so companies will need some time to recover. So when that happens, I think it'll be slowly. And I think, those of us who persist and persevere and continue to feel optimistic and survive will be the beneficiaries on the other side. And we plan to be among them.
That's great. Great advice and great news to hear from you. Paul, thank you very much for taking the time. I'm glad our Zoom call finally worked. Although, as you said, we'd much rather see you in person. The last interview we had, I think we were in your new offices and enjoying that space. But again, thank you for taking the time, and all the best to your family, and hopefully you and your wife and the whole family can get traveling soon, again, very soon.
Thank you, James.
I'm James Shillinglaw, and this is Insider Travel Report.